So we've had a couple of like America is a country that's no strangers to shootings and guns, right?
No.
And we are without a peer the worst in the world.
Mm-hmm. In terms of
The
gun
first world.
violence and fatalities?
Yeah, we have no like it's not even close.
No,
right?
it can't be. We're
Uh,
number one.
so you would think that we found the bottom of the barrel of like, yeah, you come to America, yeah, there's a chance you'd be somewhere and someone starts wilding out and kills you. You'd think that's the bottom of the barrel, correct? In the last couple of weeks, we found a deeper segment of that barrel
Yeah.
where not only can you just be hanging out in some neutral space and something happens to you, but if you make the mistake of just like knocking on the wrong door,
I mean, you should have known that.
some otherwise non-mass shooter, a person who isn't out there, seeking violence, is just instead of
This is
answering their door like a
Yeah,
regular person,
yeah,
is
yeah.
going to approach you with a gun and just blast.
it's that story. There was two of them this
There's
week.
like four.
There's four.
Yeah.
So that's what I find like really fascinating about it. I mean, besides just the sheer like devastation of it all, because this kid was like a high school kid, like looking for
This
his
is
brother.
the Ralph Yarl.
Yeah, I think that's
16.
probably the biggest story of them. Is how these things trend, and all of a sudden there's four of these types of stories. Like it's just like, what? Like the human experience is baffling in that way, and that's kind of beside the point. But yeah, I don't know, man. It goes to show like how much fear and anxiety and hostility people are living in, like behind closed doors, when they absorb all of this like hate-filled messaging from, I'm not gonna say Fox News, but you
I mean,
know,
you might as well. You can.
yeah. I mean,
I don't
They're-
think we mince words right.
they're not the only bully on the block these days, though.
It's true,
You know,
it's
you
true.
got your OANs and the other ones who literally just, I mean, they stoke the flames of this like fear and just like fear thy neighbor type of shit, and it's so crazy. Like I really, the fact that you can't civilly open your door and you're like clutching your gun so hard that a minority child like knocks on your door and that's your first instinct and reaction, like that's insane.
That was my thought initially. Okay. And that was before we got to, well, first off, gun violence, especially in like the tragic way. Like if you're talking about gun violence in the way that people are, Chicago is violent, they have
Mhm.
gangs and stuff. Like that gun violence is different to me because that gun violence is basically the extension of gangs and drugs,
Yeah.
and like a person isn't shooting because they are crazed per se and they go on a random shooting spree. It's like, no, I was on the block selling rocks and I had to protect my turf sort of situation, or this is a rival gang and we need to, eliminate them. Like that's a more like poignant, you've been rewatching The Wire.
Yeah,
There's a term basically like being in the game,
right.
whereas it's a point of emphasis to not just go out and shoot random people. Like if you're
Right.
killing someone,
Like if you're in the game, you know what you're in for and you know the risk, and those who are not in the game should not be like just taking random fucking bullets. you
exactly
know?
right. So that's a different gun violence than I'm just upset. I'm going to go out into a Walmart and blast the first 10 people I
Yeah,
run into.
which is, we had a brief conversation about that and how it's such a hard thing to wrap your mind around, just the especially like schools and like where children are, and like I don't know, like to want to just like inflict that level of violence and hurt on other people because your life is so dysfunctional and unhappy. It's so dystopian and crazy. And as much as like I don't want to be like, it is a mental health issue, but that's like such a deflectory like conversation to have, there absolutely is a mental health issue, but it's also a gun issue. It's a problem with guns in this country. It's a psychological, like, American issue, which is a gun issue, so you can't just be like, it's a mental health issue. And it's like, well, also, like, what level of mental health, like, help does the government offer, like, next to none? Yeah, like, you guys won't even pay, like, for kids to eat, like, that's how fucking ridiculous you are. And just, like, you don't take responsibility for anything,
Right. But even then, the mental health excuse, America isn't the only country with mental health problems.
Right.
Like, every other country in the world has people who suffer from depression or anxiety or schizophrenia or what have you.
Don't have as much access to guns.
They don't have access to guns, and also, just as you mentioned earlier, they have access to mental health care. It's not something that is taboo, and also not unattainable on a financial level.
Right.
You've seen those videos of people being like, hey, so how much do you think it costs to have a kid in America? And you'll ask someone like the Netherlands or Britain or whatever, and they're like, oh, I don't know, like $20 or like something along those lines. And it's like, no, actually it's around $100,000 or wherever you go. That's if you're insured
To have a child?
Yeah, the cost, obviously if you're insured, like, most of the cost goes to your insurer, but if you weren't insured, technically you could be on the hook for $100,000 depending on what they do for you.
That's exciting.
Very great system.
That's
you got
incentive to have children. And then they're like, oh, population decline and blah blah blah, it's a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Only white population decline. But even up like in Canada, just our neighbor to the north, if you have a kid there, they actually pay you $5,000.
Sick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go pump out some babies up north, dude.
Why not? It's a good racket. Help them out, send them up for adoption, and keep the money.
Take the adoption money too.
I mean, you got a whole business
Yeah,
plan
a
going
business,
on there.
dude.
We need to workshop that a little more
Yes.
after off camera. But speaking of distractions, another thing, and this is what actually got me on the topic, or got me to want to talk to you about this, because I don't know if you've heard about this. There's a new excuse that I have heard from left and right people.
Okay.
I imagine it's because we're everything's so bad with the gun violence here that we're basically at a loss as far as, like, what can we do, what can we address to, like, what's caused, like, we just can't understand it, right? We can, but we just, like, there's a defense mechanism that keeps you from hammering on the real issues.
Like, why does this keep happening?
Yeah. So one thing that's been percolating, and I wanted to see what you thought about it.
Yeah.
Mass shootings happen because the news reports on mass shootings, thereby incentivizing other shooters to want to commit a shooting because they know the news is going to report on them. It makes them infamous, and they want to be a part of that. So now mass shooting isn't really so much a mental issue, it's a clout chasing issue.
Okay. Yeah, like, that's always been there to a degree, because you've always had, like, there's been copycat serial killers, and then people who have tried to, like, pose as serial killers and things like this throughout history. But to me, that's just, like, one piece to the puzzle, because there's also, like, pretty nefarious anonymous group chat type of like 4chans and things like that, where they're called, like, Anon heroes and stuff, where there's literally, like, communities of people who will encourage you to do it. And it's kind of this, sicko style, like, psychology of, like, eating yourself, where they basically egg it on in a way. They're like, you won't even do it, you're not going to do it. The Anon mentality of just, like, egging people on who are, already in desperate places, but, like, they basically encourage it through, like, antagonizing them and being like, you're not actually gonna fucking do it, you're not gonna blah 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 blah, and, like, it becomes this weird echo chamber of amplifying this, like, level of desperation. And, like, when somebody really needs help, and this is the community of people they find that are actually just, like, vile and want to, like, encourage them to do terrible things, and they, like, worship, like, shooters and shit like this. There's, like, it's dark humor if you want to call it humor, but it's pretty sick.
Well, is it meant to be humorous?
Yes, to them it's meant to be humorous.
Okay, so they're not really trying to get anyone to.
Yes
shoot.
and no. You know, like at that level, those kind of people are the kind that will say despicable shit, but then it's all a joke until somebody actually steps over that line. You know,
Okay.
it's like gay chicken. You know, like
Yeah, that is so you and I are both born in the 80s, late 80s,
Yeah.
and grew up in the 90s. That term "gay chicken" is a term I haven't heard in probably 25 years.
no, it's been like 10 because they used to
Gay chicken?
We used to talk about it at in K Town, and used to say it all the time. And in relation to like Fast and Furious or something. But gay chicken's essentially like you just keep getting closer until like you don't kiss, but like who backs out first is like the thing. And you know, it's
Oh man.
classic straight male insecurities on full
right.
display.
It's like I kind of want to experiment, but I don't know how to. So
Yeah.
what if I just trick one of my friends into kissing me?
Yeah. Well,
See how I feel about that?
it's supposed to be a joke, but like
Yeah.
all jokes from back then, they don't age so well.
It's a joke. Who's the butt of the joke and who wins?
I mean,
Do they both
if
lose?
you both discover your sexuality together, then you both win, you
Yeah.
know? A new dimension of yourself.
Oh god, see, this is what the kids are missing out on. They don't have the
I'm sure there's a Gen Z version of that. It's
no judgment. I'm not a fan of the intergenerational fighting. You know about all that stuff?
I mean, I think it's pretty lame, really.
Yeah.
Like in general.
pipe their hair this way with Gen Z's
Well, I guess we're millennials, I
yeah.
suppose.
We're the oldest millennials.
Yeah, I guess we're not the oldest though. I think
Well,
there's
close, yeah.
3 or 4 years of us. But like millennials started getting blamed for like everything for a
Uh-huh.
while, and now there's a new generation
Right.
to start blaming for shit. And it's like millennials get to start doing some of the blaming, but it's fucked up. All it is just like things change, you
Yeah.
know, and everyone gets like, look at these damn kids.
But I feel like when Gen Z popped up, they immediately pit Gen Z against millennials. Like, and by they I mean like, you know, you don't read a lot of BuzzFeed. I do because I have to know what
Didn't they just
pizza
shut down
topping I am.
BuzzFeed News?
BuzzFeed News.
Okay,
BuzzFeed.
so BuzzFeed,
yeah,
the
there's
fun
BuzzFeed
part
and
of
there's
BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed News.
Oh, okay.
Which, gosh, this is a whole different conversation. I wish we had another hour to deal with. But, you know, despite regular BuzzFeed being, you know, listicles and nonsense quizzes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stupid
silly
drama,
shit.
celebrity stuff.
Paparazzi.
Yeah. BuzzFeed News actually did some really good news. in
Like
that.
for 1 year.
I mean, their entire time they were up, they were, you know, they would do some really good stuff. Like they've won Pulitzers. They've done some very good
Oh.
stuff. Yeah, like it was legit. And every now and then I'd catch something to go, oh, this is a really cool.
I just
one.
remember they had one story that they were the ones who broke it. And I
Yeah.
can't remember what it was.
Me either.
but-
Yeah, there was something that.
and then I
was trying to
haven't
figure
heard
out.
shit from or about them since. So
I want to say it was a celebrity death of some sort, but like beyond that, like maybe there's some foul play.
I thought there was some political stuff they broke. It was like
I can't remember, but yeah, like either way, they were legit, and
Yeah.
it's like it's such a the fact that the world is turning to shit in various ways under the cover of darkness, that BuzzFeed News is the one that gets shut down. Not because they do bad work, they actually do pretty good work. It's just that we don't ingest it because we'd rather go on regular BuzzFeed, which is flourishing, and know what pizza topping we are instead of like knowing
right.
like
It's just not profitable.
exactly. And it's like that says a lot about society to me.
I mean, this is where I've gotten with all of it, and in terms of just America, if it doesn't like make money, like we're just not gonna do it, you know. And
But what
It-
makes money though? The things
Well-
that make money.
yeah, I mean, it's just capitalism in general, you know, like what's the incentive to do the right thing, you know? There is none in America, you know, like there's people who try, like communities and things that put effort towards it, but that's the thing is it's effort, and if it's not profitable, our government isn't getting in bed with it, you know? So that's where like all the conspiracy stuff and everything just like becomes really boring to me, because it's just like, Bro, at the end of the day, it's just money. Like, somebody was trying to make money. So, yeah, like, put the pieces together all you fucking want, but it's just called capitalism. When you get down to it, it's like, and is it nefarious? Yeah. Is it gross? Yeah. But it's capitalism. It's everything you are like, fuck yeah, America. Or it's like, no, it's kind of fucking gross, you know? So,
Yeah, but I think the point I'm trying to get at is it is capitalism. But the thing is, why isn't, like, if it's okay? So if the motive is profit,
mm-hmm.
why is it that watching a group of 20 girls rip each other to shreds on The Bachelor is profitable
Yeah.
versus watching a news segment that explains how billionaires are poisoning your rivers and taking money from you and effectively like destroying your way of life? Like,
Yeah.
why is it that? Because if we're talking capitalism, it's like you vote with your wallet,
Right.
So the fact that The Bachelor is successful and BuzzFeed News is failing isn't because they are doing something, isn't because The Bachelor is doing something right per se and BuzzFeed News is doing something wrong. It's
Mm-hmm.
because a person looked at these two options and actively chose to vote for the nonsense on screen.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Like, why? Like that's a mirror to society. It's like, why
Yeah.
do we constantly choose that over the substantive
so
stuff?
I think it's, I mean, I want to say two-part, but it's more than that. But to me, like, humans get on board with like things that are more anecdotal versus like large scale, because the large scale things are harder to quantify and to make sense of, and or to feel like connected to, or to have a, like, you can have an impact. Like, people are so desensitized to like mass numbers. It's like the larger the number of the like report, the less impact it has on people in a way that hits them in their feelings. And that's the only thing that like moves a lot of people in America. So therefore you have this anecdotal thing, and by anecdotal it's a human you can see. So like you hear like in the news, like things that are being shared, like that are viral, it's always like this person had a cousin or this person's sister, and then it's like a one person scenario story, and that will move more minds and hearts than being like, the data says hundreds of millions of people will be affected by this pollution. But
Yeah.
then they'll go, somebody on TikTok will be like, my sister got cancer from this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and has this very specific narrative thread that people can follow. So it's the same thing where like with The Bachelor, there's a narrative thread. It's all like right there. It's relatable. It's human to human. And people can just like go with that, and it's digestible. It's like potato chips, People
Oh.
don't want to grapple
That makes
with
sense.
the harder, like, big brain things. And it's not even big brain, it's just like large data sets,
Well, I think you kind of hit something with the potato chip thing, because it's big brain. Yeah, isn't the correct word, because it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
Like, oh, these fucking oligarchs are taking control and destroying everything. That's an easy enough concept. But I do think that
But you're powerless in that.
you're powerless if you're someone that works you work a regular job. You're just trying to get by. The last thing
Yeah.
you want to do is come home and look at some more dystopian nightmare shit, right? You want to get your potato chips. I don't want to cook a dinner. Like, I don't want to sit there
Yeah.
over a stove making something healthy. Like, it's much easier to just open this bag of potato chips,
Yeah.
veg out, go to sleep, wake up, and go through another heartbreaking day of like reality.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so funny. Like reality television is called reality television because it's the furthest thing from it. Like realistically, The Bachelor is such a false reality. These producers, and there's these entire teams set up these elaborate dates that are meant to be so romantic and so perfect, and that's the illusion that they're like presenting to these contestants and to the viewers, and they're like, oh my god, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
But like, reality is so much more harsh and just uncomfortable, and there's just so many like tragedies happening. That's the thing. If you want to bring it like full circle with like the gun violence, like we're so desensitized, to like all of these things that it's impossible for, like, you can't live a healthy, productive life if you're gonna like worry about all these things. Can I at this point in America, it feels like you can leave your house and just like stumble into a mass shooting at this point. I've never encountered one, but I saw a stat the other day that was something like almost 25% of Americans at this point have somebody they know that's been affected by gun violence.
Yeah, I saw this. I saw the stat. I didn't dig into it.
I could be misquoting that number.
No, that's what it said. But what I don't understand, I didn't investigate, but it was like, okay, do you mean they just were in a situation where a gun came out and
it's like a Dick Cheney situation where somebody's
shot in the face? It's like whatever. Or was it? 'Cause to me, it seems like, okay, yeah, I was in a situation where someone pulled a gun out and I was uncomfortable, and that's kind of like a gun situation. Like we had to like tell them to put it away, or maybe they shot it or went off or something on accident.
Yeah.
In which case, I've been in that situation where someone like had a gun. I'm like, why do you have that right now?
I've seen a gun.
Yeah, it was, I don't
and
know
I was like,
counts.
whoa, that's a fucking gun. And then I thought about it and I was scared. And then I was like, wait, that gun raped me.
Show me on the dog where the gun touched you, right?
No, those types of surveys and stats can be so misleading in so many different ways, but it doesn't feel too far off from like a possibility that like gun violence in one way or another has like at this point it's 100%, because you see these reports and it's just like, this is fucking insane. There's more gun like shootings than there are days in the year. Like, we're getting to that, and it's like, all right.
So, but to kind of bring it back to what I was trying to pick at before we went on our segues, we are unstoppable with one train. Yeah, can't be stopped. This thing where, okay, we're not going to talk about the amount of guns we have in the country. We're not going to talk about mental health. We're not going to talk about the simple fact that we live in a country that, instead of producing an environment that allows a person to not have anxiety, anxious and build hatred within their own heart, we actively cultivate a society in which you're constantly on edge, constantly feeling alienated, constantly feeling like at any moment you need to kill someone because there's just crime or whatever, or just what have you. We do everything we can to make you psychotic.
Well, yeah, and the politics have gotten so vitriolic and so divisive in a way that, like, literally, it's so tribal. They're like, hey, the other side of this country that isn't, like, on your team is trying to destroy this country.
Or even just not you.
Yeah, like, so...
I think it's not even tribal that way. I think it's just everyone, like, you can't trust anyone.
Yeah, and that's, like, the landscape that modern politics has been cultivating for years now. And it's, like, that's why, like, at the beginning I felt so defensive, even being like, I don't even want to identify as, like, leftist, because it's all so gross at this point that there's no winning, Like, as soon as I said that, there's an entire fucking like 50% or less or more, I don't know, of the potential audience goes, fuck this person.
Right.
This person is a piece of shit. Of course he likes that. And then they just go from there. And then it's like, formulate an entire human being and put them into that, like...
AKA straw manning.
Yeah. So it's just gotten to the point where, like, there's no genuine, like, conversations that are productive. There's no, like, discussions around actual ideas. Everything is just meant to deflect and make, like, everyone enemies of, like, forming enemies from shadows, like, it's just like, what are we doing,
And that's my problem with the whole media causes mass shooters thing is that, to me, it is a deflection, and it creates a new boogeyman in this matter that will only serve to deflect from real issues. So
Yeah.
because
Or take any responsibility for it.
exactly, that's
Like-
that's the main thing, taking responsibility for it. Because if you're sitting there saying, well, first off, the idea behind it is, if mass shootings happen because of copycats. Okay.
Mhm.
First off, we were having mass shootings way before, like, copycat, or before the media was really like on it. I guess
Amplifying.
Like, yeah,
that
if you
sort
want to
of-
say that the constant news cycle of multiple day things, like,
Yeah.
no. First off, it's news. Number one, like, it's should be talked about. Okay.
Yeah.
But the other thing
And if
is,
it bleeds, it leads. So,
Yeah. the other thing is, it implies that without the news doing this, that your mass shooter isn't going to do that, which is completely false.
yeah.
I don't know if there's a single manifesto or anyone that you could talk to who says, I committed this crazy crime because I was encouraged somehow, like, by the media to get involved and be a killer. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't think there's any evidence that shows a true correlation between a mass shooter and someone wanting to simply get clout.
Yeah. No, but I'm thinking about it a lot, like just right now, in terms of like where we shine the light after these things happen, and it's the same song and dance, and is it productive in any way? Does it encourage more shooters?
Productive. Well, that's a different topic, I think. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's just like, where do you put the focus as media? You know, you kind of report on it in the same sort of way, and I don't know, like, maybe you got to rewrite the playbook. I don't think they're not, they're just a reaction to like what happens, you know, but the symptom of it is, it's not coming from them, I don't think. Do they help? No.
I don't think they can at this point. I do think they can. And I'll get to it after you finish your point, but
No,
they are
I
the
mean,
media.
yeah, I guess it's like there's got to be a better way to discuss these things, and that's it, you know. Like, it's the same thing with how we hold politicians accountable and how we hold journalists accountable. It's just like that level of, I guess, standard has degraded so much in the last 15, 20 years, it feels like.
Yeah.
That now just like everyone is so dirty and everyone is so like, I guess, I don't know, there's just blood on everyone's hands, it feels like, and there's nobody that's gonna like prop up any level of decency, because politicians are so entrenched in playing the game of politics.
Yep.
That like they can't even stop themselves for a second and just like be a human being, you know.
Right. They have to be on.
They
always.
they have to, because it's like, well, if you say this, like, there's a whole team behind it, like,
Right.
if you say this is gonna happen, so they're planning like all of these things, and it's just like, just stop. Like, can you just be a fucking person? Like, no, you can't. You just can't, because then you're losing the game, and it matters more to win in America
Right.
than to like be a decent person.
Everyone silos off, and even that term, I hate using that term, just because, like, siloing off implies that there is a cynical reason for siloing off, not a definitive right and wrong position, right?
But but that's right, though. It is cynical, and that's why they do it.
Well, politicians for sure.
Yeah.
But I just mean like regular people too. Like, shooting goes off, go to the comment section on YouTube.
Mhm.
You're gonna have your two sides. Oh, another mass shooting in America. You know, we need gun control. Another, and the other side is like, oh, here we go. They're gonna use this against, you know.
But that's what that's what drives me crazy, is because there's a very rational there's a rational response, and it's common sense gun reform laws and like making people more accountable for their purchases.
Common sense to you.
It's common sense. Like, it's absolutely common sense. You could trace bullets to like the nth degree. You could do so much. So much. And nobody wants to even talk about that, because it goes to this binary way of thinking. Because if you even talk about that, they're going like the right. They're gonna take all our guns and blah blah blah, and then I can't defend myself from the government, who I support when Donald Trump's there.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're gonna shoot the government? Okay,
Yeah.
like, what? And then the left, and like the most extreme left, is just like, yeah, burn all the guns, and it's like, that's not gonna work. But why can't we track every single gun?
Yeah.
If you don't have a trackable gun, like, let's get a fucking like actual list and just like get the shit figured out. There's so much technology present, and I would love to be smarter about this, and I've heard like actual things in regards to how you can go about this, but there's plenty of things that can be done that just don't happen.
Shall not be infringed.
Cool. That's all I'm gonna say about that, because
Well, I feel like we can go on and on about this forever. Because
Right.
there's just so much about the gun stuff. But one thing I was alluding to earlier was something that the media could do. This may sound radical, but I do think,
we changing topics.
not quite yet, but I think we probably should if you want to.
Oh, okay, if
Talk
we want
about
to get
something
into it, yeah, but go
But,
ahead.
I just wanted to leave this out there. There is something that could be done as far as the media, and maybe doing something to really jerk people awake about the carnage that happens in these shootings,
Mm-hmm.
which is they show the bodies.
Oh, man, but isn't there? There's a name for that. It's like murder porn and shit.
Sure, you can. I mean, was it Rule 34? There's going to be something.
I mean,
that's-
I don't mean actual porn.
No, I don't.
but,
I know.
like,
I know you
there's-
don't mean that, but I just mean in the sense that there's going to be someone out there who's always going to take a thing and turn it into something that isn't. So not actual porn, but just like, these are dead bodies, and you're supposed to be jerked. Like, your senses are supposed to be jerked with
Yeah.
this, instead of you being like, oh,
No.
this is really sweet.
Yeah, no, you're right, because there's so much level of like censorship in America of like acting like this. Ooh, we're decent, and the decorum of it all, and it's like, no, look at it.
Yeah.
That's what fucking happened. Like, because
This is what you're enabling.
this is what you're fucking like allowing, you know. But there are like sickos who, and I'm not saying murder porn like that's a thing they're jerking off to. It's like,
Right. No one's saying that.
yeah, so don't start doing that.
No
either.
one's talking about that.
But there's that level of I don't know. It's like, remember when the internet first started?
Sort of.
One of the first viral things that ever happened was like rotten.com.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
If you remember that.
Uh-huh.
And it was literally just the grossest, like the grossest thing the internet had, and they just randomly display. All you do is go boop, next, and you just see
yeah.
murdered corpses, you know, fucking like dead dogs and all this fucked up
My
shit.
God, it did not take any time for someone to put.
That was like one of the first things that I remember, like somebody telling me about, and I was just, it was awful. It was purely like, it was vile.
Wow.
But yeah, like there's a level of voyeurism, and it's like how you do it, you know, like, but again, like, this is why humans react to stories better than they do just like numbers. But because if you can take something like that and if you can make the right point with it, maybe. But I don't know if that, like, it's not gonna fix everything, but
Yeah, but so the psyche behind it is, you know, if you recall the Emmett Till story.
sounds familiar. But
Okay, just to recap for anyone who may not know what
I
happened.
don't, so I need to recap.
Okay. I'm going to get to Cliff Notes because it's,
Yeah.
first off, it's heartbreaking, and second off, it's just, you
Tell
know, we
it-
don't need to do. So anyway.
Make it meaningful while I wear this cum shirt.
Once again, we have to address your.
My attire. We don't have to. Let's move past it.
Is that from Afro?
No.
Okay, so Emmett Till was, I believe it was Mississippi.
Right.
He was in. Young black man. This is, you know, racially even more so than now. Contested Mississippi. You know, we're in the 1950s, 1960s. I want to say it's before.
Back when America was great.
Back when, like, there was not a single problem, and we could just go back there and be super great.
Gotta make it great again.
He was this young man, or a young black kid. I want to say he's around the age of 16.
Right.
In town, and he allegedly whistled at a white woman.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
That's a big allegedly.
Maybe even like touched her like on her, like nothing I guess sexual, but just like made it known that he was thinking she was looking fine, you know.
Okay.
So this woman tells, I think, her brother. They get pissed because how dare this, you know, Negro
Oh man.
sit there and eyeball a white woman like that and objectify her. So
Out of
he
line.
gets his two other buddies. They go find Emmett.
The good old boys?
The good old boys.
They're
you know,
definitely good old boys.
basically, you know, drag him out of his house, beat him. I want to say drag him by, you know, with their truck, and then, you know, just like destroy this kid and dump him in a river, right?
Ugh.
So, forgive me if I don't have all those facts 100% correct, but you know, it's just terrible. But anyway, so they find the kid.
Yeah.
And they have a funeral service for him. This is, you know, another black person killed by some racist whites, like, you know, another day in the South. So, but his body is like disfigured, right? He's fucked up. He's swollen from being in the water for so long. You know, like it just looks, it's crazy. These pictures are nuts. So instead of having a closed casket funeral, which is what they would normally do when the body's so fucked up, his mom, damn, what was her name?
Something Till.
Yeah, I want to say May. Anyway, she opts for an open casket funeral, and the media's there, and they take pictures and they show what he looks like, which is part of like what caused a lot of civil rights movement, you know, like activism.
Right.
You know, similar to, you know, if you're looking at those images of black people marching and getting beaten by cops and bitten by dogs and stuff like that, like those images were instrumental in the civil rights movement to like show like, no, this is like your opposition to civil rights isn't just this innocuous thing that has no consequences. Like it has consequences, and this is what they look like.
So good, yeah.
That's the reason why, you know, if you're talking about gun violence, you like, no, show them what voting for people who are against gun rights does. This is what it looks like when you vote this way.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, and it's very valid, but it's also like you can't do it, because then it's you need a spear with a tip, right? And that's a spear with a tip. So you get to plunge that into somebody's heart and make them realize, like, with the narrative, with everything. That's why I talk about like anecdotal and narrative based like conversations are the things that move people's hearts, you know. That's something that, like, look at it, don't look away, you know. And it's how you frame it. So it's hard to say, like, because if you're just showing gratuitous violence even in like a movie, it's just like, well, why are we fucking doing this, you know? So it needs point and purpose. So yeah, it is around the conversation, and when it's all deflectory, just like thoughts and prayers and like, oh, how did this tragedy happen and blah blah blah, and it's like, no, look, these fucking kids are dead. And like, why can't we go to the senators and the people who like have these conversations with those photos and be like, why does this keep happening, and why do you still be like this? And yeah, I mean, there's their point. Your point is like very well taken, but I just think it's like, it's how you use that. It's that sword and shield you need for the narrative to change minds, you know?
Right. But so to add to that, these images of these kids, so a lot of people don't know what these assault rifles do to the human body, right?
Yeah.
So I think even talking about this now, people who are watching this, they're thinking, oh, these images are just going to show like kids on the ground, bloody, you know, like hole in the side, and that's not going to be the case.
No.
What these guns do to the human body is they don't just put a hole through your head, they explode it. Like, these kids are effectively decapitated.
Ugh.
Right? Like, they've lost the top of their skull. There's a exit hole the size of their body.
And this is, you don't even, like, that's not the conversation even. You don't hear somebody describe it in that way.
Exactly.
Because it's so much like deflection in terms of just like responsibility for what's happened. But I mean, one thing I will say, it's like the only thing preventing that, well, not the only thing, but one major thing is the families of the loved ones who have experienced this, their loss, you know, like in your example of Emmett Till, his mother was the one who was like, I want people to see this, but like, I can't imagine a lot of parents like wanting the, like, I'm sure they don't want to see those, and let alone like be, but then when you talk about the other side and like how Alex Jones weaponized an entire narrative around them being actors, and how fucking challenging that must have been for these people for years and years to deal with like irrational fucking like sickos like harassing them, you know. It's just it's so despicable. And right. I do think there's like there's a really valid conversation around like how the left doesn't fight dirty, and how if they really wanted to get in the mud, because Republicans don't care. They'll fucking throw out. They'll do every dirty book in the, you know, every dirty trick in the book. And if the left really wanted to fucking like, you know, pull up their sleeves and fight with some actual ammunition, like that's a route to go. But they won't, because they're fucking like pussies.
I mean, that they very much enable.
Forgive my sexism.
They very much enable the sort of game that goes, you know, like
they get gamed, you know, man.
We're better than the Republicans. It's like, are you? Because I don't like, typically when you're better than someone, you fight against them, not just sort of like coddle them in a way. But
coddling. Yes, that's great. That's a great word for what they do.
Yeah, I have a whole. Gosh, I wish we had more time.